What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. If you are new here, my name is Kelvin Soa, and I'm on a mission to helping new developers learn how to build cross-platform mobile applications with React Native. In the previous lesson, we were able to set our development environment where we saw how we can make use of Expo Go to run and test our app. Now, if you need a refresher or want to go through that video, I'm going to leave a link down the description, and it should also pop up at the top here, and you can revisit this video if you have to. In today's episode, we're going to dive into some of the core components that power every React Native app. Components like the view, text, buttons, and also the touchable opacity. These might sound basic, but understanding how they work and how to use them together is the first real step towards building beautiful, interactive mobile apps with React Native. By the end of this video, we're going to learn how to use the view to structure layouts, how the text component works and how to style it, and also the pros and cons of using the default button from React Native. We're also going to learn how to use the touchable opacity to create our own custom reusable buttons that are fully customizable. Now, if this sounds exciting, do want to leave a thumbs up on this video and hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. And also, you can leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section. Any problem at all or any challenges at all you may be facing, you can also drop them in the comment section, and I'm going to attend to each and every one of them. Without any further ado, let's get into coding. Okay, so we are back in our workspace here, and let's first talk about the view tag. So you can think of the view tag as a wrapper or a container that holds other components, right? Just like how you have divs in HTML. The divs hold other tags like the p tag or the h1 tag or what have you. That's the similar thing with the view that we have in React Native. So it basically serves as a wrapper that holds other components. And in this case, you can see that the view tag is being wrapped around a couple of texts here. And you can see the texts over here. So this text is actually inside a view. It's not just there alone. It's actually inside a view. And the view happens to be the whole of this side. How do we know that? Now you can see that within this view, we have this attribute, style attribute here. Now, what is this style? Just like the name says, style. It basically applies some styles to the view. Okay, so this is one way of applying styles to components in React Native. You can basically have the styles inline, and in this case, the styles has been applied to this view inline, right? And the styles here is just like the styles in normal CSS when you are in web development. Okay, the normal CSS cascading style sheets in web development. You can translate that knowledge back here in React Native. Okay, so in CSS, we have the flex, where we have the flex one, we have justify content, and then the align items. Now, these are things that are already existent in CSS. But then in React Native, we don't write it like how we do in normal CSS. You know, in normal CSS, to write justify content, it's something like this, justify hyphen content, right? And then you put your value over there. In React Native, this is not what we do. We actually use the camel casing syntax, right? So instead of having the justify hyphen content, you write a justify and then you capitalize the next word, which is the content, next to it, just like how you do in an object. Okay, so justify content and then you apply the values here. So you can simply apply your CSS knowledge over here as well. The goal with React Native is to make learning React Native very simple. That's why the knowledge from web development has been sort of translated back into mobile development, so that the barrier for entry wouldn't be set too high. You understand? And it's going to make learning it very easy. Okay, so you can basically apply the styles in here. Now let's add a background color. And to add a background color, simply type in the background inside the styles background color, and then let's give it a color red. Okay, now this should come up now. Let's reload the server. Okay, good. So now you can see the background here is now red. Okay, the background here is now red because we applied the background color of red on this view. So this tells us that indeed the view is actually a wrapper that holds other components. And in this case, this view is wrapping this text components that we have here. Now, This this way of styling is one way. There's also another way where you'd want to separate or extract the style from the view itself. Now you can do that with style sheets from React Native. So what mobile app React Native developers do most of the time is create this variable here called, say, const styles equals style sheet. Okay, style sheet, and it's been imported from React Native. Style sheet dot create to create a new style sheet, and then you open your object notation, right? Now over here you can basically create styles, add objects that's going to hold styles that are going to be applied to the various components. So you can add a style called container here like this. Now you can name your styles anything you want, so it can be anything at all as far as it's in an object notation, right? Now you put a container, let's say container, and then let's apply these styles. Let's bring these styles over here like this. Good. So now instead of having the styles here, we can just clear all of this and then call styles. This object that we just created, styles dot, and you can see we have this container option here, styles dot container. So you can see nothing has changed because we've now extracted the style from the view itself, and we can now edit it over here. Now if you want to change the background color, I can simply come here and then see blue, and it's going to get applied. Okay, so you can basically just transfer, like I said, your CSS knowledge over here, and then you apply any styles at all you want. Okay, good. Now let's get to the text. So the text components from React Native here, basically like the name says, text holds text, right? It basically holds text or characters. Now if you want to write text, you cannot use a different component to hold text characters. Okay, now let me remove this background color so that everything is visible. Now what I'm saying is, you see, in web development you can actually have text characters inside, let's say, a div, and it is still going to work. But something like that would not work in React Native. It's going to throw an error, or it's going to break your app. Now let's try that. Let's say I over inside a div, I just type hello over here. Let's see what happens. You can see we are getting an error over here, right? We're getting an error warning text strings must be rendered within a text component, which means every text string needs to be inside a text component. Let me sort of zoom there so that it is more visible. And then let's close this. Okay, so you can see we are getting text string must be rendered within a text component. Great. So this tells us that we cannot write text strings inside any other component aside the text tag, which that's one thing you need to note. And also, because CSS is cascading, you might think if we apply a style to the view, let's say a text style to the view, it's going to be applied on the text, but it's not going to work that way. Now let me explain further so that you understand what I'm saying. So let's say we want to style the text, right? Let's follow the same structure. Let's say style, and then let's give it styles dot text. Now this text hasn't been added here. That's why we are getting this TypeScript error. So let's copy this and then bring it here, which means now we've added the text here. Now we can add some styles. Okay, so for this text, I can set the font weight to be, let's say, bold like this. And you can see the font is now bold, and you can even increase the font size. See, font size is 30, which is 30 pixels, and you can see it's been applied. Now you might think if you apply some text styles over here, it's going to cascade it and affect these components within, but it will not work that way. It's not going to be applied because that's not how React Native works. It doesn't follow the same rules as, not all the rules as it is in web development. So you can say something like color, which is the text color, and say green, but it's not going to take effect on any of the text here because you need to apply the text on the individual text components. So if instead of applying it here, you remove it and then come and place it in the text style, you should see it reflect over here. That's one thing you should also note. So this is view and then text. Now we also have buttons in React Native, and you can basically use the native buttons from React Native. You can use, say, button, and then you import it from React Native like this. And then it needs one attribute called title, right? And we can call it press me. Let's restart our development server. Good. So this is how the default button looks on iOS. It might look a little bit different if you're on Android, but then basically this is how the default button looks. Press me, and then that's basically it. And it takes some other attributes like the title and then the on press. So this on press basically is an event listener that listens to functions. So if you want to run a function, whenever that button is pressed, you basically place it in the on press attribute here. So let's see, we have this function here. We have this function here called, let's just call it handle press. This can be handle press. Not going to take any params. Let's just use an arrow function. So we're going to say const handle press is going to be this. Okay, and let's see, when it's simply going to console.log button pressed on the console. Okay, and then let's bring the function over here. So basically what we are doing is that anytime this button gets pressed, we want to run this function. Okay, that's the purpose of this this function, this button. Okay, so now let's open the terminal and see what happens. We press this button and you can see the button pressed appears on the console. Button pressed. So basically the on press event handler here basically handles the function that you pass to it, just like what we have done here. So that's buttons. But you would notice that with this button, we don't have a lot of flexibility to make it look and feel like how we want it to. So what most developers do is they use other touchable components. Now, what are touchable components? They are components that also behave in a way like buttons, but then we have control over them and we have more options in using them and deciding how they are going to look originally, as opposed to using the normal button components. And that brings me to our next one, which is the touchable opacity. So for the touchable opacity, basically like the name says, touchable, to use it, say touchable and then opacity. That's the touchable opacity component. And this touchable opacity here, it has a style attribute, unlike the button. Now you see with the button doesn't have any style attributes, which means we cannot style the button. Okay, we cannot apply any style. So if you want this button to look a different way, it won't be possible for you to do that. But then with touchable opacity, you can think of touchable opacity as a view, but it has other options that we need in a button. Okay, so a view, for instance, does not have an on-press event. It does not have an on-press event. But then a touchable opacity does. Like this. It has so it means we can pass a function to it. So let's create a new function for the touchable opacity and call it handle touchable press. And then we pass this function over here like this. Now here we are just going to log touchable button pressed, touchable button pressed. Okay, so right now you're not seeing anything here because, like I said, you can think of the touchable opacity component as a view, and a view is not visible unless you style it, but then it is there. Okay, the touchable opacity component is actually there, but it's not visible for the eye to see because we haven't applied any style to it. So let's apply a style to it. Let's add a style and say styles dot, let's call it button, like this. And then we copy the button and then come back here in our style sheet, paste it in here, and then button. Now we can apply some styles. Okay, so here we can give it a padding, right? We can give it a padding of, let's say, 6 pixels, and let's give it a background color of, let's say, blue, like this, or even let's use green. Okay, and you can see it has now started appearing over here. Now, to add a text to the button that we are creating, we can simply add a text component. So you see, like I said, you can think of it as a view. You can think of a touchable opacity as a view, but comes with a button feature. So you add a text inside here, and then let's see, touchable button. So you see, in this case, the touchable opacity becomes the wrapper that wraps around this text component. Okay, and then now let's style. You can even choose to style the text, and then say color is white. All right. So you see how we have control over the touchable opacity. We can style it. We can even style it how the text looks and everything. And you notice that when you press on it, we get this opacity thing there indicating that indeed something has been pressed. So that's the flexibility we get from using the touchable opacity component. We can basically create custom buttons from using the touchable opacity. And you can notice that when you press on it, the opacity is a bit too strong. Here is a bit too strong. So you might want to like change it a bit, change it up a bit. So to do that, you simply come here and then say active opacity should be something like 0.6. Now the opacity should be in the range of 0 to 1. Okay, the opacity should be 0 to 1. If it is 0, you cannot see it at all. Okay, if it is 0, you should not be able to see it at all. Let me restart this. So it means when I press on it, you won't see the button. You see, when I press on it, you won't see the button. But if I set the opacity to be 1, it means if I press on it, it's going to be there. I'm pressing on it. I'm actually pressing on the button, but you're not seeing any touch. So you can go ahead and then find a number that suits what you want it to look like. Okay, so the number should be in the range of 0 to 1. So you can say 0.6, for instance. Okay, so you press on it and you can see now it's a bit light. If you need it to be more lighter, you can increase it a little bit to 0.8. And you can see the opacity is there, but then it's not that strong. You see, so yeah, basically that's how touchable opacity can serve as buttons in React Native. Okay, so at this point we can go ahead and then push our code to GitHub. Let's end this, create a new branch, git checkout -b, and then we name the branch lesson 2. So now we are on the lesson 2 branch, and then we can go ahead and then commit. Let's say feature, and then we call it button. Let's say button view and text, like this, button view and text. And then let's go ahead and commit this and publish the branch. So once that is done, we should have it on our GitHub repository. So if this video has been helpful, please don't forget to like, comment, share your thoughts in the comment section, share this video, and then subscribe to the channel as well. Thank you very much.